we were in your dailies, essentially, and I'll be talking to you guys about a topic that, I'm gonna kind of just rip the band-aid off on this one. PS2's gotten too easy. Substantially too easy. And let me try to explain here. I know for some of you guys, you're like, duh, dude, where have you been? I've been saying this forever. Some of you guys, you're like, hey, didn't you talk about how a lot of these things are positive for the community, so on and so forth? I think it's GPID 2. Yeah. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I have. And I feel like it's important to mention, it's important to separate what I like for myself versus what I think is positive for the health of the community in its current state. And to explain that properly, I feel like I need to also kind of explain where I'm coming from in the grander scheme of things. So, one thing to keep in mind is that the space of live service gaming and MMO gaming has changed pretty dramatically over the years. It isn't really what it used to be, and that's in part due to, of course, the average gamer changing. Of course, we had, pandemic and things of that sort, bringing about an entire new type of gamer that really wasn't a part of the space that is now. Not that that's a bad thing, but, it is something that we have to think about. But, these things are affected, and they do change things on top of, new generations growing up and things like that. And a big part of that is information technology. Things aren't really hidden anymore. Things that used to take, upwards of weeks to months to come to light for most people now show up in hours and days. Weeks is surprising in most cases. In a lot of situations, you'll find that most players know about everything almost instantaneously, to a point where you have to actively try not to know about things. You have to do things like, hey, look, no spoilers. First time playthrough, don't backseat, so on and so forth. It's a very common thing nowadays because everyone kind of knows everything. And it's a big part due to information technology. We see it, we hear about it, we talk about it, I can talk to someone on the other side of the entire world about something instantaneously. My alliance alone has people that are in all different time zones across the world. People that might be in Australia, people that are in Europe, people that are in Asian continents, things like that. They're everywhere. So information technology is huge. Things just are not the same. And with information technology growing, gaming also had to evolve. In the past, where you could have small little, just what I'm looking for here, puzzles, last for a while. They now, if you have a game come out and it's been 48 hours, you could probably just Google the name of the puzzle and you'll find an answer to it. Now, it's hey, but if you don't want an answer, you don't have to look for it. The thing about it is that's just part of what exists nowadays. That's what a lot of game developers have to deal with. They have to work through. They have to figure out, hey, look, I want this thing to be interesting and different. I want it to be more difficult for people. How do I do that? How do I make something like this to exist? And a lot of times what's happening is one of two situations. Either you get time gating, which is terrible, which it's really, really irritating. Basically, you hard lock what people can do over a certain course of time. That way it lasts longer, which a lot of people are not big fans of that. Or what you end up getting is people just grind things into pace. It doesn't last long enough, and you get the conversation, there's not enough content. You probably ask yourself, why does it feel like there's never enough things to do nowadays? And the reality is we're blasting through it faster than we ever have before. If things that previously released nowadays that weren't time gated, they would be destroyed in the same sort of ways. It's insane how things have changed. Things like world racing in MMOs, they're now being broadcast to everyone. You're figuring out strategies because you can watch other people do them before you get a chance to do them yourselves. Half the time, when I was doing week 1 progression rating, most of the fights were beaten in the first 2 or 3 days before I even got a chance to try the fight in the first place. We already had strategies that existed before we ever got a chance to get around to them. And yeah, we did come up with our own strategies, for sure. There were things that worked better for us than so on and so forth. But it's something that happened very commonly nowadays. All this to say that, yeah, the game has changed and we adapted with it. So why am I talking about PSO2 being too easy? Well, whenever I don't have a video idea, or whenever, actually, to be perfectly honest, this is more of my thought process or my process in the first place. Whenever I am either going through Discord, or am I going through, Reddit, or reading about different things that people are like, oh, don't go to the Reddit, don't go into the official Discord. But the reality is these are players. They're like us, right? These are people that are playing the game much like myself. So I do want to see what they're doing, and to keep myself grounded, I want to see what it is that they're talking about, right? I'm not the average Joe. I play this game a ton, and I always will. thing about PSO2 is it's got a special place in my heart. I've always loved Phantasy Star games, and I met my wife playing this game. So it's always going to have an extra, sort of, there's going to be a little bit of extra bias, a very large one, when it comes to PSO2. So at the end of the day, it's something that's going to happen, but I do want to keep myself somewhat grounded to understand what people are talking about, what players are talking about, so on and so forth. So I do go to these different places and kind of get an idea of what they're doing. And one thing I like to do is make notes and look at things and look at trends and look at how things have been going based on what we've had access to. And a very common thing I'm noticing is that we're complaining about things that we're asking for in a very large way. Now, there's some things that they show up and I'm like, why did they decide to do this? And I don't know who asked for this. This is very strange. But there are other things that, for example, with this whole unit situation, I'm getting complaints from players, or I'm seeing complaints from players talking about things like, the units are now unsellable, they've gotten via resources, so on and so forth, and I'm like, this is exactly what we asked for. It was a very common thing for players to complain about everything being tied into the market, especially with the fact that, free-to-play players can't really interact with the market the same way. They can't sell things, so it's harder for them to make money. What they were looking for is an upgrade path that wasn't reliant on money. A very common thing that a lot of people asked for. And they did that. They not only gave us the units, you had the ability to go after them early if you wanted to, but they've now given us 90 varianted units accessible via simply just doing the event, which you actually would have to farm for. You could literally just do your dailies, which I'm doing right now when I talk to you guys in a video. Funny enough, I'm literally doing my dailies right now. Doesn't really take very long to do them. And recording a video at the same time while I talk to you about the situation itself. And you get everything that you need. The average player who isn't looking to absolutely go super ham, which I'm going to talk about that in a moment, isn't looking to go fully best in slot, who doesn't really care about that sort of thing, it couldn't be easier to gear up in PSO2, and it's something that people are complaining about. I don't understand it. On one side I'm seeing the complaints, on the other side I'm seeing people say it's not worth it. So it's really confusing to me even further in a lot of situations. Let's double check and make sure we finish that task really quick here. Daily. Yeah, okay, we finished it. Alright, awesome. So yeah, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And I think part of the reason behind this is the game has gotten just too easy. One thing I'm noticing, and this is something that a lot of live service MMOs have to go through. Something that I watched, Final Fantasy go through recently with the most recent expansion, where they've kind of gotten a bit of return to form, where things are a bit more difficult. They talked about the previous expansion, things were a little too easy. Things you really didn't have to try for anything. Even the hard grind was made substantially easier, where you didn't have to really try to get your weapon, and a lot of people really didn't like that. Coming from a situation where a lot of people talked about the grind being really annoying and over the top, a lot of people, what they found out basically, I'm losing my mind here, I'm not doing this to the script by the way, so apologies. But what they found out was a lot of people that were complaining like this, they were the vocal minority. Most players enjoyed their longer grind. They enjoyed the feeling of, putting in that effort and getting that weapon at the end of it. And when that was taken away, a lot of people got really, really upset about that. So, they've kind of gone back on that with this new expansion. They've kind of worked on a bit of a return to form. You're a bit more stress on what you're doing each day. They kind of worded it as stress, which is kind of funny when you think about an MMO. It's like playing a video game to de-stress, not stress. But yeah, it is what it is. Basically, just saying they're giving you more, more of a reason to try, more reason to give. One of those situations where you don't really have to try at all. And honestly, it kind of hit. Like when I went to play the expansion for Dawn Trail, I went and did the first expert dungeon. Normally expert dungeons are pretty rough the first week of a new expansion, but this was a whole new level, man. I never really paid attention to most dungeons at all. I didn't really care all that much, and the first dungeon kind of slapped, pretty quickly. If you weren't paying attention, you got absolutely rocked by some of those bosses. Some of them I kind of feel like are BS, but you really had to actually try, and it was a very different feeling based on, what we had been used to from so many dungeons for so long. And it was awesome. It was fun. It made me think about actually going an expert. Now granted, for a long time I went an expert on basically any class, because I was like, dude, it's easy, I'm not going to think about it. I don't have to try. It's whatever. I'm gonna get to the end of the dungeon in about 15 minutes. We're gonna pull wall to wall. I'm gonna AoE the crap out of what we're fighting, and then we're gonna get to the end of the dungeon in about 15 minutes. That's what's gonna happen every single time. And while that mostly happened, there were bosses, like mini bosses, mixed into some of the packs. We had bosses that were quite literally one-shotting if you weren't paying attention to the mechanics properly. It was pretty insane to feel, and honestly, it was awesome. It was a great feeling. Now, this is like Final Fantasy doing their return to form. With PSO2, what I'm finding is actually something similar to what I experienced in a relationship long time ago. One of my exes. You're not really like hanging out with me at all, blah, 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 blah. Held back, I hung out with her more, I hung out with them less, so on and so forth. And then I kept doing this, and she kept complaining about it until I found out that I didn't have any friends. I wasn't hanging out with anyone. I wasn't doing anything with anyone. I was basically streaming by myself. Granted, I still had my streaming audience or whatever, and I kind of pulled away from doing that too, right? All of that was taken away. It still wasn't enough. And then I realized the problem wasn't what I was doing. It was her. If someone doesn't want something, it doesn't matter what you do to change it. It's not going to make it any better. How does this relate to PSO2 in the slightest? And this is where I'm going to give you guys the kind of like, I'm going to say the beat drop or the shoe drop or whatever it happens to be. But I solely and I truly believe this, like, deepest part of my heart, right? And this is just for me personally. Sega needs to stop listening to people who don't want to play the game. I mean this wholeheartedly. I don't mean this as an insult to anyone else, but we are having people complain about playing the game. Like, having to go out and get your gear. Having to actually earn an upgrade. Having to farm to get something. Guys, it took 45 minutes to upgrade my armor to the new variant version. And people are still saying that it's a scam and not worth it. You did not have to try. You didn't have to do anything, and people are still complaining and wanting more. I mean, when they released new armor and gave it to people for free, like for leveling, that just kind of tracked for me. That's pretty standard for most games these days. You have like a starter set of gear that you go with, and then like you kind of upgrade from there. The problem with a lot of players is they don't ever move past that. And PSO doesn't really punish you for that at all. You can do every piece of content in this game, barring the most difficult piece of content, like the hardest piece, which is at the moment is MDFD. Barring MDFD, and I actually don't know if that's still the case anymore, by the way, since we can level up now. But you can do the most difficult piece of content, barring MDFD, as long as you are max level and have the free gear that they hand you without having to try. And you're thinking, oh, well, that's totally enough, right? That gear is totally enough. If you're using that gear after everything they've given us, you're absolutely griefing yourself. And it's not even like, oh, a try-hard thing. Let's say you're a fashionista, and you're like, I want to farm fashion. If you're using the free gear they hand you to farm fashion, you are quite literally griefing your own fashion farm. It's insane how bad that gear is comparatively to the stuff that they hand you for free. And people are still using it. And this isn't like, hey, stop using the free gear. What I really mean is that as flawed of a system as Battle Power is, it is far too forgiving. You should not be able to get into every single piece of content available in the game with the free gear they hand you by max level. And you're probably thinking, oh, well, you have to max level. It is not difficult to max level. It is not hard to get leveled up. In the past, in PSO2, like in base PSO2, all you had to do was level and you can get into content, and that was awful. People were able to do some pretty annoying things getting into that content. Now, again, it's not perfect. Situation that I'm saying, hey, look, this needs to be iterated on. But Sega needs, and this is in my opinion, we have to stop listening to people who don't want to play the game. It's fine if you want to be a lobby rat, that's totally fine. But I feel like if you're a lobby rat, you logged in, you were given your free gear, you should not be able to do everything. You should have to have some form of progression. You should have to go into this and say, hey, look, work on this and get this piece of gear. When you get into this, you can now do this thing, and you can now work on that. It should feel like a reward for you to be able to go into the newest piece of content because you're geared for it, and then make money to then go into the next thing you're doing, right? It's tough, right? It's difficult, and it's unfair when you're kind of behind, but it's the reward for trying and pushing ahead or staying ahead, being able to make that money early, being able to get those items early, being able to, farm up the money to get that fashion early, whatever it happens to be. And I think that if we continue this route, it's going to cause a lot of people to just never leave that sedentary lifestyle. I've always said you can't force people to upgrade your gear. You can't force someone to want to go after something. To me, it's crazy to not want to get stronger. I don't understand the thought process people have when they log into the game that's based on combat and fashion, and they want the fashion and not the combat. People are like, oh, well, if I spend money on my fashion, then I can't, or I spend money on combat, I can't have fashion. Dude, I spend money on both. Like, I grind out both. I'll sit here for the next 5 hours and grind out money, that way I can have an upgrade for both. And it's not like it's difficult to grind out money. They've made it very easy to grind money. You can grind money extraordinarily easily. But literally, in less than an hour, you can grind the upgrade for the best units you have in the game. And yes, I know it is not a vast difference from what they have previously, what they gave us previously, but it takes you 45 minutes. And there are players still complaining about that. And to me, it just reminds me of doing everything that's asked for, and it's still not being enough. And at some point, you have to realize that maybe they're the problem and not you. That's my thoughts on the matter itself. Now, granted, I'm going to continue to upgrade. I'm going to continue to live the best life and enjoy my time in the game. I'm continuing to farm, make money, get the fashion, get the gear, and all that good stuff. But I really think for the overall health of the game, at least for my own personal enjoyment, I'd really like it if Sega stopped listening to those players. Stop listening to people who don't want to play the game. If your thought process is it's not worth it, and you quite literally haven't done anything, then do you even want to log in? What is it going to take for it to be worth it? Is the game going to have to one-shot you? Do they have to make you not allowed to go into content? Like, if you're not allowed to go into content, is it going to be worth it for you to get into the content? Like, what is it going to require? I'm curious personally. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And again, I know everyone's going to agree with me. Probably going to get flamed in this video, to be perfectly honest, and it's totally fine. I wanted to give you guys my thoughts on the matter itself and be upfront and honest with you guys. I think it is a problem. I think it's a problem that's existed for a very, very long time. And I think if we don't get away from it, things are going to continue down this path. And yeah, I could show examples, but last time I showed people making comments in a video, everyone got real butthurt and bent out of shape, even though it was from a completely public forum. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to shame people online like that.
If you enjoy what I do, please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. We're playing right now NGS. So let's get started. Alright, so as you heard the video when Krono said it's too easy, right? NGS is too easy, which is true. Became too easy to the point that the players, or the player base, as in the majority, or certain players and certain content creators, with that being said, it minimizes on who is he talking about. Just look at NGS official websites in different social media platform. You could tell who's the one shifting the game how it is, especially when like positive and negative point of view. That's like when someone's saying, oh, because there's such a negativity and hate the game, but also there's positive that is negative, that doing the same effect of they don't like the game, and they probably haven't been playing the game, or they're having playing the game, that they're sharing their own opinions of trying to hurt the game itself and the player base. I'm just gonna leave it alone and leave it at that. But like you know what? Let's see what else he says, because there's more I want to say, but as well I want to pick and choose how I say certain things, because end of the day, people going to view yeah. Anyways,
substantially too easy. And let me try to explain here. I know for some of you guys you're like, duh, dude, where have you been? I've been saying this forever. Some of you guys you're like, hey, didn't you talk about how a lot of these things are positive for the community, so on and so forth? I think it's GPID 2. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I have, and I feel like it's important to mention, it's important to separate what I like for myself versus what I think is positive for the health of the community in its current state.
when he said that, I can disagree, because knowing and viewing his content, as well as you guys probably have seen, there, in my opinion, all right, I think he has a lot of things in his mind, and he's trying to juggle, excuse me, every bit information, even though that is positive and negative, the ones he hears, the ones he sees, and since he's running his own videos as well, he's being self-employed to be a content creator. There's a battle of liking, what do you see? NGS, and disliking, which is fine. You can be biased, or you don't want to be biased, depending on your self-image or how you want to people look at you in some shape or form, which I understand that, and I don't want to disagree. But let's see what else, because there is a matter of hand how you get certain information or saying certain things that can be double meaning.
And to explain that properly, I feel like I need to also kind of explain where I'm coming from in the grander scheme of things. So one thing to keep in mind is that the space of live service gaming and MMO gaming has changed pretty dramatically over the years. It isn't really what it used to be, and that's in part due to, of course, the average gamer changing. Of course, we had, pandemic and things of that sort, bringing about an entire new type of gamer that really wasn't a part of the space that is now. Not that that's a bad thing, but, it is something that we have to think about. But these things are affected, and they do change things on top of just new generations growing up, things like that. And a big part of
I don't think so. Is because why I say that? It doesn't affect the game whatsoever, regardless of if you're a content creator or not, as if you're a player in this game or not. It depending on yourself, because if you could handle people saying shit, and if you could handle criticism, or you can't, it's better to not let certain things get out. And why I say that? Because he's mixed. I wouldn't say he's trying to be sincere. I'm not trying to hate. But he's trying to be sincere and explain his, I guess, fears, as well as the change in the game itself. Because there are certain people that is pure hardcore fans that are losing it and scrambling everywhere. They're in a panic attack. And maybe certain content creators that are losing it and they're getting a panic attack. I don't know, to be frank. But like myself, I don't really care about those things. But, and again, he's trying to explain the game itself and gaming in general is changing. It's a shift. But that shift been long before its prime. The shift is when all sorts of information leaking out and going into media. That's his topic of certain change. There are things that used to be secrets, used to be on a certain broad range of narrowness of how you do things, how you work to point A to point B, like leveling up, for an example. If you're gate kept from a company and you're trying to increase your level and improve your character, getting better equipment, getting into dungeons and raids, etc., etc., you won't be able to go all that far if you didn't have the information or knowledge. Because back in the day, all it was is from certain websites or very less people that knows about certain things, and the only way you could get to point A to point B is by joining a group and joining that players that knows that certain secret. But that's like way back then, like in the early and the late 2000s. So no, I digress. It's around in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s that the game industry, that's how it was, that's how it is. And as like mid 2000s, I should say, like maybe 2005 or 7, 2008. And then from that point, as the, you know what? Better yet, better example. DSi, and then you have from there Wii, because that's when people start able to intertwine and be able to be connected throughout the net. That's what he's talking about. From that point, if you know about Nintendo DS and DSi, and from up to Wii, you'll get the better picture of how the evolution of social media expanded with a lot of information. So, and let's see.
That is information technology. Things aren't really hidden anymore. Things that used to take, upwards of weeks to months to come to light for most people, now show up in hours and days. Weeks is surprising in most cases. A lot of situations.
And another thing, he's also confusing it with mid-maxing, because things just going like a blink of an eye. You want to go fast, you want to do rush challenges, things like that. That's part of the community. He is part of the community as well. Mid-maxing. He mid-maximizing his gear, his equipment, and other type of VTubers. I mean, not VTubers, excuse me. YouTubers. Other content creators. And as well as players. Mid-maxing has been ruining certain gameplay. But I can digress. It's how people manipulate mid-maxing, how they're going too far with it, because mid-maxing, it's okay type of playing style. It's just a playing style, how you want to fit in, how you want to do things, if you enjoy it or not. But it's get to the point that people are doing it for, I want to say, harm the community, harm the game, harm the company in a way, because they found a golden egg that it's pretty much kind of cheating. That's how they take it to that level, that it's ruining their reputation, it's ruining their experience, and everyone else that isn't involved in that type of category. As you know, there are other type of mid-maxers that doesn't do that. It doesn't ruin the enjoyment or the fun of playing the game. But you know what? I can digress. I don't want to say too much about it, because I am trying to make a video of mid-maxing. Just, it's going to take me time, because that is going to be a long ass video. But anyways,
You'll find that most players know about everything almost instantaneously, to a point where you have to actively try not to know about things. You have to do things like, hey, look, no spoilers. First time playthrough, don't backseat, so on and so forth. It's a very common thing nowadays because everyone kind of knows everything. And it's a big part of the information technology. We see it, we hear about it, we talk about it, we can...
Okay, but he didn't explain why. What was his first question?
Used to be, and that's in part due to, of course, the average gamer changing. Of course, we had that sort.
It's not an
An
excuse,
entire
though.
new type of gamer that really wasn't a part of the space that is now. Not that that's a bad thing, but it is something that we have to think about. But these things are effective, and they do change things on top of just new generations growing up, things like that. And a big part of that is information technology. Gaming also had to evolve. In the past, where you could have like small little
No shit. Gaming needs to evolve for the better, not for the worst, because companies, how they're making their game, it's ruining the game experience as of now. Think about this. Back then, game was completed. You don't need no DLCs. Or you don't need an update or a patch. And wait for chapter 5, wait for chapter 6, wait for chapter 7, and so on and so forth. You kind of get the idea. Games were polished to the point and made it as perfect as they can. They fix what they need to do at that period of time and moment. Now, they give you incomplete game, buggy, and you get the gist of you guys as players, you guys as gamers, playing different type of games, different category of games. If you're that type of person, if you're a type of person that's stick to one game, one type of franchise, or on one certain type of category of game, you're gonna get into of that boredom and burnout repetition. Maybe. I can digress. You could be falling in love with that game and you're waiting for part 2 of that game, or the new series of quote unquote I want to say knowing the inside and out of certain games, because that's what you like and what you enjoy. But that's to take it in general and kind of like in personal level. It is what it is. Why complain? Because I'm playing for myself, right? You see different type of games that I have played in my experience, and I have stopped here and there on certain games, but I keep going playing different games without you guys seeing in videos. There's certain videos or certain games, it's I want to put a video out there, or I'm interested in time to make a video. I'm not following a certain trend, but it seems to me there are different types of people that are into certain things. They want to follow what the media, or what is popular, or the trend, whatever, regardless. It is what it is. We are people.
Just what I'm looking for here. Puzzles. last for a while. They now, if you have a game come out and it's been 48 hours, you could probably just Google the name of the puzzle and you'll find an answer to it.
Yeah, because from Generation Z and Alpha, trying to do things the easy way. And probably that's how they grew up. Doing it easy way. Like, let's say it's not an easy way. Okay, I'll be playing devil advocate. What if they've been doing something really hard, they're struggling, but they need more insight, more detailed information, how to do this, how to beat that, how, the how, what, where, when, why, how, sometimes why, excuse me, not why. Anyways, people, if that's how their parents showed them how to do it, they're gonna adapt it, or they learned it from school. You're gonna adapt and you're gonna get into the same habits, I should say. Is it a bad thing or good thing? No. It's just that that's how it is. That's how we all get to, in a certain point, maybe become a little bit more smarter. And some people, it's just, they cannot keep up. It's like technology. As humans, we're all humans. We cannot keep up with technology because technology, at this moment of time, it keeps on advancing, keeps on improving, keeps on getting better, and so on and so forth. And it's just a cycle. It's like a infinite cycle, that it's a loop that it gets better each time that they do that loop, the infinite loop. Because their energy or their focus is that focus, and they keep on getting better and improve that focus. We're not infinite as humans. We're not immortals. We're more immortals. That we are kids. We became infants. Well, babies, we became infants, and we become kids. And kids become pre-teen. From pre-teen, you become a teenager. And from a teenager, you're young adult. From young adult, you become an adult. From an adult, you get in your prime age. From your prime, you get to your mid-age crisis. For mid-age crisis, or mid-age, don't want to offend people that's mid-age, but from there, you start to have your seniority. Seniority is because you lived from infant and from that moment. And from seniority, you become an elder. And from there, time will tell. And I don't want to say the ending, because that's where we end. Depending how far you progress in your age, how much experience and the burden that you carry, and la-di-da-di-da. Don't want to get too um, you know, too realistic. But that's how it is. It's just a linear path. It's just one way. We live, you know, you're waiting for your deathbed. Sadly, but true. But that is all. It's just a waiting game. And how much long you have to keep on living. But, you know, I digress. I don't want to talk about too much about that because certain issues that I'm dealing with, you know, um, family members. But anyways, I don't want to put into that, or you guys don't need to know about that. That is, you know, my personal thing. But we're talking about games. So let's see.
Okay, but like, you know, if you don't want an answer, you don't have to look for it. The thing about it is that's just part of what exists nowadays. It's what a lot of game developers have to deal with. They have to work through. Hard lock what people can do over a certain course of time. That way it just lasts longer, which a lot of people are not big fans of that. Or when you
Wait, what? Give me one moment.